All right, here we go. Today we have former Queenpin and BMF affiliate Brandi Davis. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Thank you.
Well, you have a very interesting story, and I want to start in the very beginning. So you grew up in Detroit.
Yes.
Okay. And your mom and dad have a kind of an age difference, right?
Yeah, they do. A big age difference.
Okay. And your mom was 16 and your dad was in his 30s
Yeah, he was
somewhere?
around 32 at the time when they met.
Okay. And do you know the story of how they met?
Well, I got a little bit. I can recollect a little bit on it. My mom told me, like, back in the day, when she met my dad, she was younger. My mom had a whole bunch of sisters, and like all my aunts are like really, really pretty. So my dad met her, but it's always a joke because she said, like, back when my dad met her, he was like a pimp. Um, and it was always, she said, when I met your dad, I met him and I had to let him know that, I wasn't going to be one of his hoes. She was like, so I hope he didn't think that. But he ended up meeting her. My grandma didn't like my dad at first because of the age difference. So she said my grandma was very much so against that. But eventually, I guess you know how love is. They end up progressing and she ended up getting pregnant with my sister at 18. So they were locked in since then.
Right. And there's 3 kids altogether.
Yes, I have 2 sisters. One that's 5 years older than me. Her name is Choo. We call her Choo Choo. And then I have a younger sister that's 4 years younger than me. Her name's Lily.
Okay. So here you are growing up in this family. There's 3 kids. And what you don't know early on is that your dad's actually a major drug dealer in Detroit.
Correct.
Okay. And you guys are growing up in, sort of a wealthy kind of household, right?
Suburban. Yeah, regular suburban household.
Okay. And your mom is basically a stay-at-home mom who takes care of the kids while your dad does whatever he does.
Yes.
And brings in all the money.
Yes, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And what's crazy is a lot of people ask me, like, how didn't you know your dad was a drug dealer? But what they don't understand is back in that day, hustling was a little different. You know what I'm saying? Like, a hustler wasn't like a guy with big jewelry or walk around with saggy pants. Like, my dad got dressed, he wore suits, and he owned a lot of real estate in Detroit, like, properties, apartment buildings he owned. So I always thought my dad was a real estate investor. So growing up, I thought my dad did real estate. So if anybody asks, like, what did your parents do for a living? I'm like, my mom's a stay-at-home mom and my dad does real estate.
Okay. And that story was going until 1993 when you were 11 years old and all hell broke loose.
Yeah. One morning we were getting ready for school, typical getting ready for school. My mom was making us breakfast, me and my sister. We were eating breakfast in the kitchen, getting ready for school. And we heard a big boom, 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 boom at the door. And what's crazy is I don't know what my instinct told me. I felt like when somebody was bamming at the door, it was somebody trying to bring harm to my family. Only because growing up, a lot of my cousins, or that's not really blood cousins, but people I grew up and called cousins, their dads was in the same lifestyle as my father. So at a young age, I experienced some of my friends' fathers being murdered, mothers being killed. So in the back of my mind, when I heard that bamming at the door, I thought somebody was coming in to bring harm to my family. When they finally got in, I seen that it was the police, and it's sad to say I was a little bit more relieved to see that it was law enforcement instead of somebody trying to get into our house and do something to us.
Well, the feds burst through the house,
Mhm.
guns drawn, laser sights on
Yes.
everybody. And, there's kids screaming, mom screaming, and then they go and arrest your dad.
Yes, it didn't typically go like that. Like at first when they came in, they took me and my mom and my sisters, they had us in a corner in the kitchen. They had guns to us. But my mom, she ran up the stairs first. Like before they came in, she must have knew what time it was because she ran up the stairs and she must have woke my dad up. So when she woke my dad up to let them know somebody was at the door, they caught my mom at the top of the stairs like this with her hands up. And then they brought her down into the kitchen with me and my sister and had us in the corner. Then they took us into the family room and then they were raiding the house or whatever they were doing. And they eventually brought my dad down in handcuffs, probably about 15 to 20 minutes after they bust through the house.
I mean, what was it like for an 11-year-old little girl who kind of had no idea that any of this was happening to see her dad in handcuffs. And I think your mom got handcuffed too?
Yeah, because she was an adult. It was
Right.
traumatizing. You know, like my dad had all daughters. So we always grew up, we was like daddy's little girls. So I love my dad. That was like the man that I looked up to. He was like everything to me. So at that time, I wasn't thinking about what he did for the police to come in. I was more so worried about his safety and where he was going. So it was real traumatizing.
Okay. So after the police arrested your parents, what happened next? Because eventually your dad got convicted. But what happened like right after the
After they
situation?
arrested my dad, they took him out in handcuffs, and my mom had called her best friend, and my aunt came over and she picked us up, and we left and we went to her house. After all the drama was over with, we came back home later on that evening, and when we walked in the house, it was like a mess. Like all the drawers was out, clothes was everywhere, couch was flipped over, like the whole house was a wreck. So for me, I felt violated. Like these people then came and destroyed my home. I didn't look at it as, oh, my dad's a drug dealer and the feds came in to do that. I felt like they violated and they destroyed my home that I grew up in, and we was there all night and next day trying to put our house back together.
Okay. Your dad ended up getting 3 years?
Yeah, he did like 3.5 years in federal prison. Yes.
Okay. So after your dad gets locked up, are you guys still able to maintain your lifestyle, or was your dad being gone kind of messed you up financially?
No, nothing messed us up financially. My dad being gone, we still live the same lifestyle. Like nothing changed. I mean, the cars changed because they forfeited, all the fancy luxury cars. So before my dad left, he had went to the auction and bought my sister a car and bought my mom a car. So really the only thing that changed was the vehicles, but we still had our house, and it wasn't like my dad went to jail and they like money's tight or we can't do this. We still traveled. We still lived the same life all the way until my dad came home.
Okay. And your dad came home in 96, 97?
He came home after my sister graduated from high school. So it's probably around 96 because she was on
Okay.
her way to college when he came home.